Thursday, northeast winds 5 to 10 knots, becoming north 5 to 15 knots. Seas 2 to 4 feet. Thursday night, north to northwest winds 5 to 15 knots. Seas 3 to 5 feet. Friday, east to northeast winds 5 to 10 knots, becoming south to southwest 10 to 20 knots. Seas 3 to 5 feet. Friday night, south to southeast winds 10 to 15 knots. Seas 3 to 5 feet. Here is the latest offshore marine for the following marine locations include south of New England between the Great South Channel and Montauk Point to 1,000 fathoms. Storm warning. Today, west winds 35 to 45 knots, increasing to 40 to 50 knots. Seas 14 to 26 feet. Tonight, west to northwest winds 35 to 45 knots. Seas 15 to 25 feet. Tuesday, northwest winds 25 to 35 knots, becoming west 20 to 30 knots. Seas 11 to 18 feet. Tuesday night, northwest winds 25 to 35 knots, diminishing to 20 to 30 knots. Seas 8 to 14 feet. Light freezing spray. Wednesday, northwest winds 15 to 25 knots. Seas 7 to 13 feet. Wednesday night, east to southeast winds less than 10 knots, becoming east 10 to 20 knots. Seas 3 to 6 feet. Thursday, east to northeast winds 15 to 20 knots. Seas 5 to 8 feet. Thursday night, northeast winds 5 to 15 knots. Seas 4 to 8 feet. Friday, east winds 5 to 15 knots. Seas 3 to 6 feet. Friday night, east to southeast winds 10 to 20 knots. Seas 5 to 8 feet. Here is the latest offshore marine for the following marine locations include Georgia's Bank between Cape Cod and 68W north of 1,000 fathoms. Storm warning. Today, west winds 35 to 45 knots, increasing to 40 to 50 knots. Seas 14 to 26 feet. Tonight, west winds 35 to 50 knots, becoming 35 to 45 knots. Seas 14 to 27 feet. Light freezing spray. Tuesday, west to northwest winds 30 to 40 knots. Seas 12 to 20 feet. Light freezing spray. Tuesday night, northwest winds 30 to 40 knots. Seas 11 to 19 feet. Light freezing spray. Wednesday, northwest winds 20 to 30 knots. Seas 9 to 16 feet. Wednesday night, northwest winds 10 to 20 knots, becoming east 5 to 15 knots. Seas 5 to 8 feet. Thursday, east winds 10 to 20 knots, becoming northeast. Seas 5 to 8 feet. Thursday night, north to northeast winds 10 to 20 knots, diminishing to 5 to 15 knots. Seas 5 to 9 feet. Friday, east to northeast winds 5 to 15 knots, becoming east to southeast 10 to 15 knots. Seas 3 to 6 feet. Friday night, east to southeast winds 10 to 15 knots. Seas 5 to 8 feet. Now for the official National Weather Service forecast for southeast Massachusetts, Cape Cod, and the islands, including Fall River, New Bedford, Plymouth, and Taunton, issued at 10:18 a.m., Monday, February 25th. This afternoon, mostly cloudy early, then becoming partly sunny. A slight chance of rain and snow showers early. Very windy with highs in the upper 30s. West winds 25 to 35 miles an hour with gusts up to 65 miles an hour. Chance of precipitation 20%. Tonight, mostly clear. Very windy and much cooler with lows around 19. West winds 25 to 35 miles an hour with gusts up to 65 miles an hour, diminishing to 15 to 25 miles an hour with gusts up to 45 miles an hour after midnight. Tuesday, sunny, blustery, cooler with highs in the upper 20s. Northwest winds 15 to 25 miles an hour with gusts up to 40 miles an hour. Tuesday night, mostly clear. Lows around 12, except around 16 across Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket and across outer Cape Cod and Nantucket. Northwest winds 15 to 20 miles an hour with gusts up to 35 miles an hour. Wednesday, mostly sunny with a 40% chance of snow. Cold with highs in the upper 20s. Northwest winds 10 to 15 miles an hour with gusts up to 25 miles an hour, becoming west 5 to 10 miles an hour in the afternoon. Wednesday night, mostly cloudy. A chance of snow until midnight, then snow likely after midnight. Near steady temperature in the mid-20s. South winds 5 to 10 miles an hour, becoming northeast after midnight. Chance of snow 60%. Thursday, mostly cloudy in the morning, then becoming partly sunny. A chance of snow in the morning. Highs in the mid-30s. Northeast winds 5 to 10 miles an hour. Chance of snow 40%. Thursday night and Friday, mostly cloudy. Lows in the mid-20s. Highs in the upper 30s. East winds 5 to 10 miles an hour. Friday night, mostly cloudy. A chance of snow and rain. Near steady temperature in the lower 30s. East winds 5 to 10 miles an hour. Gusts up to 20 miles an hour after midnight. Chance of precipitation 50%. Saturday, rain likely. Snow and freezing rain likely in the morning. Highs in the mid-40s. Southeast winds 15 to 20 miles an hour with gusts up to 30 miles an hour. Chance of precipitation 60%. Saturday night, mostly cloudy. Lows in the lower 30s. Southwest winds 10 to 15 miles an hour, becoming west after midnight. Gusts up to 25 miles an hour. Sunday, mostly sunny. Brisk with highs in the upper 30s. West winds 15 to 25 miles an hour with gusts up to 35 miles an hour. Here are 11 a.m. conditions across southern New England's coastal waters. Off the east coast of New Hampshire and Massachusetts, at Isle of Shoals Tower, the wind was west at 39 knots, with gusts up to 44 knots. At Boston Buoy, located 16 nautical miles east of Boston, the wind was west at 33 knots, with gusts up to 39 knots. Seas were 6 feet every 5 seconds, and the water temperature was 39 degrees at Massachusetts Bay Buoy, located 25 miles east-northeast of Boston. The wind was southwest at 27 knots, with gusts up to 35 knots. Seas were 6 feet at Gulf of Maine Buoy. Seas were 13 feet, and the water temperature was 40 degrees. To the south and east of Cape Cod, at Nantucket Sound Buoy, located in Nantucket Sound, the wind was west at 25 knots, with gusts up to 35 knots. Seas were 3 feet every 4 seconds, and the water temperature was 36 degrees. At southeast Cape Cod Buoy, wind west at 31 knots, gusting to 41 knots. Seas were 7 feet. The report from Nantucket Buoy was not available. And off the south coast of New England and Long Island, at Buzzards Bay Tower, wind west at 31 knots, gusting to 39 knots. At Montauk Point Buoy, located 25 miles south of Montauk Point, the wind was west at 33 knots, with gusts up to 41 knots. Seas were 12 feet every 8 seconds, and the water temperature was 41 degrees. At Long Island Buoy, the wind was west at 31 knots, with gusts up to 43 knots. Seas were 12 feet every 7 seconds, and the water temperature was 40 degrees. At Block Island Buoy, seas were 15 feet, and the water temperature was 42 degrees. Around Narragansett Bay, observations courtesy of the National Ocean Service ports. At Providence, the wind was northwest at 26 knots, with gusts up to 40 knots. Connecticut Point, the wind was west at 30 knots, with gusts up to 36 knots. On Prudence Island, the wind was northwest at 70 knots, with gusts up to 29 knots. At Quonset Point, the wind was northwest at 70 knots, with gusts up to 27 knots. At Newport, the wind was west at 70 knots, with gusts up to 25 knots. At Fall River, and the water temperature was 43 degrees. Here is the official National Weather Service forecast for Cape Cod Bay, Nantucket Sound, Vineyard Sound, Buzzards Bay, and Rhode Island Sound, issued at 10:20 a.m., Monday, February 25th. This afternoon, west winds 25 to 35 knots with gusts up to 50 knots. Seas 5 to 8 feet. Tonight, west winds 30 to 35 knots with gusts up to 50 knots, becoming northwest 25 to 30 knots with gusts up to 40 knots after midnight. Seas 5 to 8 feet. Light freezing spray after midnight. Tuesday, northwest winds 20 to 25 knots, diminishing to 15 to 20 knots in the afternoon. Gusts up to 35 knots. Seas 4 to 6 feet. Light freezing spray. Tuesday night, northwest winds 15 to 20 knots with gusts up to 35 knots. Seas 3 to 5 feet. A chance of light freezing spray. Wednesday, northwest winds 10 to 15 knots with gusts up to 20 knots, becoming west 5 to 10 knots in the afternoon. Seas 2 to 3 feet. A chance of snow. Wednesday night, south winds 5 to 10 knots, becoming northeast after midnight. Seas 2 to 3 feet. Snow likely. Thursday, northeast winds 5 to 10 knots. Seas 2 to 4 feet. A chance of snow through the day. Friday, east winds 5 to 10 knots, increasing to 10 to 15 knots with gusts up to 20 knots overnight. Seas 2 to 4 feet. A chance of rain and snow through the night. Here is the official National Weather Service forecast for the outer coastal waters from Cape Ann to Nantucket to Montauk, New York, including the Stellwagen Bank National Marine Sanctuary, issued at 10:20 a.m., Monday, February 25th. This afternoon, west winds 25 to 35 knots, increasing to 30 to 40 knots. Gusts up to 55 knots. Seas 10 to 15 feet. Tonight, west winds 30 to 40 knots with gusts up to 55 knots, becoming northwest 25 to 35 knots with gusts up to 45 knots after midnight. Seas 9 to 14 feet. Light freezing spray after midnight. Tuesday, northwest winds 25 to 30 knots, diminishing to 20 to 25 knots in the afternoon. Gusts up to 40 knots. Seas 7 to 10 feet. Light freezing spray. Tuesday night, northwest winds 25 to 30 knots with gusts up to 40 knots, diminishing to 20 to 25 knots with gusts up to 30 knots after midnight. Seas 5 to 8 feet. A chance of light freezing spray. Wednesday, northwest winds 15 to 20 knots, becoming west 10 to 15 knots in the afternoon. Gusts up to 25 knots. Seas 4 to 6 feet. A chance of snow. Wednesday night, southwest winds 5 to 10 knots, becoming east after midnight. Seas 2 to 4 feet. Snow likely. Thursday, northeast winds 5 to 10 knots. Seas 2 to 4 feet. A chance of snow through the day. Friday, east winds 5 to 10 knots, increasing to 10 to 15 knots with gusts up to 20 knots overnight. Seas 2 to 4 feet. A chance of rain and snow through the night. The current time is 12:13 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The following is a summary